We last saw the Noble Can-Am Series in action 3 weeks ago on June 18th at Lime Rock Park, and while not much has changed in the series since then, of course, much time has passed. We've added a driver or two, and these drivers have had plenty of time to get up to speed at the kind of combo road course and street course that is Circuit Gilles Villeneuve. Welcome to Pit Stop TV this evening. My name is Andrew Cardinale IV, and I'm so glad to be taking you through the action this evening for the Noble Can-Am Series in round number 3 of 9 in their first ever season. We'll get into the iRacing.com sim and take a look, of course, high above the virtual Montreal, Canada, and at our track map this evening, brought to you by Whiplash Media SimCams. Of course, Circuit Gilles Villeneuve, a long-time Formula One course, has hosted NASCAR in the past, has been a long-time track here on the iRacing.com sim as well, and you can see plenty of fast laps there on the left side of the screen. On the bottom, you've got GT4. Lewis Ward has the fastest lap in GT4 at a 141.098 in the McLaren 570S. At the top, Formula One Racing, Julian Magalon with the current Mercedes AMG W13, at least current on the iRacing sim, at a 112.701. The closest I can get you as far as those kinds of times would maybe be the NASCAR Xfinity Series, at least the closest to what we're running this evening, at a 139.444, set by Casey Kerwin in the 2021 Toyota Supra, but our times this evening will be far from that. Let's take a look at our our standings coming into this evening after 2 races of 9, and you can see things have quickly gotten out of hand for Zach Millett out front of the field. And I got to get that one right. I'm used to saying Zach Millett. It's Millet, like mullet. I've been told that a couple of times. I'll try and work on that, Zach. But Sean Roberts in the second spot in the standings from Pennsylvania, 108 points back. On the late model stock car side, though, you can see things are a bit more put together at the top of the field. It takes all the way down to Mark Thomas in 4th position to make a 100-point deficit between your race leader and another driver. Kevin McCann still in that conversation. Steve Singer very close. Chris Goins there in the 5th position. Then Leonardo Elijah and Neil Quick, new additions to the top 10, both at 9th and 10th. Qualifying is underway on track. Johnny Rapp, the fastest so far in a late model stock car. And of course, this is something we'll have to get used to over the course of the season, is which car is faster, late model stocks or super late models. And right now, the fastest time is by a late model stock car. That is Johnny Rapp in car 52 from the New Jersey club. Kevin McCann, I'm sorry, I had that backwards. That is a super late model, Johnny Rapp. I had that completely backwards. I was a little bit mistaken, sure, but Kevin McCann, fastest late model stock car, 2nd place currently, as Jason Duckworth checks in the 2nd place super late model time. And hey, well, look at that good looking paint scheme for Steve Singer this evening. Pit Stop TV yellow adorning the number 6 Ford Mustang. Oh, and he even made the switch over to Ford. I just realized that from the Cadillac that he's been running. So shout out there to Steve Singer. That's a good way to get some TV time for sure. Brian McCann on track at the number 3. Can't look past Mark Thomas. Brand new chrome paint scheme there for Mark, and I really do love the way the side of this car looks. Bad Obsession Motorsport. Jason Duckworth on track. Spencer Torrance, brand new to the series from Firelight Esports. Glad to have a Firelight Esport driver in this field. You see the FLE logo there and the left headlight of that Dodge Charger. Up over the curbs at the wall of champions. Oh, he got the outside wall. That's going to invalidate that lap time. Lap number 2 out the window for the driver out of the Mid-South in car number 10. And that will do it for his qualifying run. Unfortunate for the Brez Coffee Company, number 10. Sean Roberts on track, though. Also in a super late model. Jacob Elliott has just, is currently wrapping up lap number 2 for his run. And we'll see if car 07 is able to go up on the board at all. It's a 142.672, and that is good enough for a late model stock pole, picking up right where he left off after his late model stock and overall win at Lime Rock Park. Jacob Elliott quick this evening at Montreal. How about Leonardo Elijah in car 43 comes across the line to complete lap number 1? So 148, 108, that is the slowest of the bunch so far. Zach Millett is now on track as well. And Mark Truxell is in the pit lane. And I want to go back to the track map for just one moment here during qualifying. There's a lot to talk about with this lap. And I think, of course, turns 1 and 2 were very, very famous among NASCAR and Formula 1 fans. A lot of great moments down in turns 1 and 2 here at Montreal. But then you have kind of what feels like one chicane, a bend, a chicane, a hairpin, and then a chicane. A lot of chicane-type corners here at Montreal. That is kind of the gist of things. Even turn 1 into turn 2 is a bit of a chicane until you get to that hairpin carousel. But turns 3 and 4 are very, very difficult on the curbs. Same with 6 and 7. The corner that I think really gets me personally, it is turn 6 and 7. When I turn laps here, if it's not 6 and 7, it's 8 and 9. That middle section of the back end of the track, if you will, really middle section of the racetrack, really gets me as Zach Millett goes quickest in qualifying by nearly 2 seconds, might I add. What a gap back to second. 1.96 seconds from Millett back to Johnny Rapp. And Millett comes across faster than a NASCAR Xfinity Series car in that super late model. He was cooking on that lap. Only turns 1 and now brings it around slowly on lap number 2. Leonardo Elijah, though, on his second lap, down into turns 10 and 11. No, sorry, that is 12 and 13. I gotta get that one right. 12 and 13, the Wall of Champions. I know it by the name more so than the corner numbers. And Leonardo Elijah will be slower that time around. Zach Millett is back under power, and Sean Roberts is back on track. While these drivers continue to qualify, it's a good time to take a look at our Whiplash Media race details. It's a 60-minute or 30-lap race, whichever comes first. And it should be the laps this evening as we're ticking in at 138s, 140s, that range. So a 30-lap race here at Circuit Gilles Villeneuve, and a 45% fuel load, 2 chain sets of tires, nothing changes there. 1 fast repair for these drivers, and a 1 penalty every 21 incidents. Sean Roberts still on his qualifying run. This is lap number 2, and might be his only, well, it will be his only lap of record if he's able to get back to the start-finish line and get it to count. On board with Sean. In the driver's eye perspective, this is scary down into 8 and 9. Way hard on the brakes, trying to get right to that first apex curve, and it's just not going to happen. You've really got to get down through the gears quickly, and he was not able to do that in the number 66 Shenandoah Shine.co machine. So Sean Roberts unfortunately has to abort that qualifying attempt. And that, I think, will finalize qualifying for us this evening. We will see Zach Millett and Jake Elliott drop to the end of the field as they have their win penalties from last week at last race, I should say, at Lime Rock Park. Now, I will say Spencer Torrance was second in practice, and he's a driver that I expect to be 100% in the conversation this evening and might give Zach Millett a run for his money. We've just got to wait and see. Let's take a look at our schedule for this season. The first season for the Noble Can-Am Series. Of course, we opened up back on June 11th at Miami, Homestead Miami Speedway. Then we went to Lime Rock Park on June 18th, had a couple of weeks off. Now we have a couple of weeks back at it before an off week between the Glen and Mid-Ohio. Motorsport checks in for round number 6 on August 13th. Unfortunately, I don't think we'll be here for Atlanta. Road Atlanta on August 27th, but then we have some off weeks in between Road Atlanta, Sonoma, and Long Beach. And I do believe we've worked things out for Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course, where the only round that we'll be missing this season for the broadcast will be round number 7 at Road Atlanta. Hello, Brendan Kennedy out in the YouTube chat. Good to see you this evening, as always. And had to get myself a quick drink of some canned energy. I'll go into that in a second, but let's take a look at our starting grid this evening, as we have got 16 cars in total at the virtual Montreal. On pole, although he'll be dropping to the rear, it is Zach Millett in car 315. Johnny Rapp will grid up from second and take over provisional pole. Jacob Elliott was your third fastest qualifier, and it's interesting. It looks like these guys will be separated by class on the grid, but are not separated by class here on our starting grid graphic. So work with us here, but Jacob Elliott will be starting from the... Oh boy. See, now I have to try and work pieces out. So Jacob Elliott will be starting from... I'm sorry. The 7th position. I believe we have six super late models, so Elliott will be starting from 7th technically, although he'll be sent to the rear as well. Kevin McCann will then be starting from the 8th spot. Then, of course, Steve Singer, Brian McCann, and Mark Thomas, your next late model stock qualifiers. Jason Duckworth, the super late model, will still be starting with the supers, as he will actually take over, technically, the provisional pole position, as Zach Millett will have to start from the pit lane. Troy Radford, Leonardo Elijah back here for the late model stock. Spencer Torrance, of course, along with Sean Roberts and Joe Tucker, will join the super late model grid. Then Mark Truxell, Eric Beadle, and Eddie Rose round out our grid this evening. I know that was a little bit disjointed, but bear with me. I guarantee it'll make more sense as we get racing this evening at Circuit Jules Villeneuve. 30 laps the distance for us, and into the restart zone already for Johnny Rapp and Jason Duckworth, waiting on the green flag for round 3 on the season. It's a long front stretch from the Wall of Champions, but green flag is in the air in Canada. Late model stocks now racing to the start finish line. Green flag for the late model stocks. Steve Singer alongside Brian McCann. Kevin McCann, rather. And Kevin McCann deep into turn 1. He takes over the top spot. Johnny Rapp side by side with Duckworth. He'll take over the top position in super late models. One car in the wall, Mark Thomas in car 50 in the outside wall heading into turn 3. They get it sorted out, and already Jacob Elliott up to the 8th position in class after a start from the rear of the field for winning at Lime Rock Park. Johnny Rapp, Jason Duckworth, Spencer Torrance into turns 8 and 9. It's been a long day, I gotta tell you what. But Spencer Torrance on the back end here of Jason Duckworth. Lap number 1, let's go on board with car number 10 as he fires down to the hairpin. Turn 10, in deep on the inside, trying to make this pass stick, and it will. Big move there from driver number 10 in his first start in the series. I told you he would be one to watch as Zach Millett works here on Leonardo Elijah through turn 10 at the hairpin. And already the driver who started from the pit lane is working up to Jacob Elliott, who of course started from the rear of this field. And this is going to get hairy quickly. Nowhere for Millett to go. He's going to try 3. Nope. Just back into the inside. And that is deep into the Wall of Champions. Oh, Jake Elliott moved over in the braking zone on Truxell. That was scary big time. Lap 1 complete here at Montreal without incident as we have a lead change. Spencer Torrance in turns 1 and 2 goes right on by Johnny Rapp for the lead. And that's a pass we have to go back and check out. For Spencer Torrance in car number 10, take a look at this. Brand new to the series, first start here this evening. Watch Torrance in the white and brown 10 on the inside, sets himself up perfectly for turn 1, and that just allows Johnny Rapp to overshoot the corner and then lock up in turn 2, and easily, just like that, Spencer Torrance takes over the top position. In late model stock cars, Kevin McCann has taken over the race lead from Steve Singer. Brian McCann follows him up in 3rd spot. Troy Radford joins us from 4th position in the 94 car. Let's not forget Mark Thomas, Jacob Elliott, Mark Truxell, that bunch. And that, of course, is where we find Zach Millett, who is driving back through the field. And right on by Mark Truxell, Millet will go. So he is 6th in class, now chasing the 6th place late model stock car, as Millet currently runs in the 12th position overall. And a bit of trouble there for Jacob Elliott. Loose out of turn 10, spun the tires, and I think Millet's going to have a good shot at him by the time they get to Wall of Champions. Yes, sure enough, there goes the 315 right on by. The superior motor in this super late model definitely makes a difference. And purple time there from Spencer Torrance, taking over the race lead and setting the fastest lap of the race. That could be outdone, though, here by Zach Millet to the line. Car 315, does he go any faster? As there's a slow Troy Radford. Can only imagine what that's all about. An odd place for the 94 car to be so slow, but we'll take a look here as to what might have happened for the 94. Maybe some corner cut, hard to say. But Troy then pulls over here on the front stretch and lets a lot of time go. There goes Mark Thomas. Here comes Zach Millet. And Radford, now live, has allowed Jacob Elliott to go by as well. We already have some interesting traffic between... Actually, struggling. I guess it's Joe Tucker on the noses. Problems for Johnny Rapparise in turn 10. Big issues for the 52 car. He goes from 2nd to 4th in a hurry in class, and that drops him from 2nd to 8th overall. Now trying to get back by Brian McCann. He'll do that, and he's going to have a run on Steve Singer for the Wall of Champions, but will stay in behind. A lot just occurred. We keep having these moments where a lot is going on. And we'll take a look here for Johnny Rapp. Into turn 10, trying to defend over the 73 of Duckworth, and Rapp just gets in deep to turn 10, nearly loses the rear, gets hit a bit by the 73. Roberts goes by the 13 of Joe Tucker, ran himself clean into the outside wall all by his lonesome. And that is a big issue for the 13 car, who was on the nose, by the way, of Kevin McCann briefly going into that entire complex, and that's what really threw me off. The fact that our late model stock cars were running down one of the super late models really caught me by surprise, as Tucker hangs it out there out of turns 3 and 4. Steve Singer a little bit sideways there out of turn 7, and already you can see Kevin McCann starting to put some pressure again on the super late models, reeling in Jason Duckworth. Meanwhile, our race leader has checked out by 6 seconds nearly. Spencer Torrance doing a beautiful job in the BrezCoffeeCo.com Dodge Charger. You can see there in the background it's finally Sean Roberts out of the hairpin at turn 10, and a pass maybe, as Zach Millet will finally improve his position in class and gets by Joe Tucker in the 13 car, brings Mark Thomas along with him, but not for long. Thomas beating a straight line easily by that 13 car. We'll have to let that one happen. Zach Millet now through to 5th place. He is chasing down Johnny Rapp. There's a 3-second gap currently as Rapp follows up Kevin McCann, Steve Singer, and Brian McCann. Now, if I'm a little bit off today, I do apologize. I've just spent 3 days in the sun in 116-degree heat indexes, and Johnny Rapp goes for a spin in turn 1. That is not how you get it done there. But 3 days in the sun in North Carolina, broadcasting from about 8 in the morning to 7 at night at UNC Charlotte for IFAF flag football and the one flag football tournaments. It's been a lot of fun. It's just taken a lot out of me as, of course, I had to get back in time for this show. Could not miss this, of all things. On board with Brian McCann, 3rd place in late model stock car, 6th place overall. By the way, Johnny Rapp is now last in super late models after starting first. Effectively. Once again, down the long casino straightaway to the Wall of Champions, still on board with Brian McCann. Check out the speeds these cars turn into this final set of corners. 141, 145, 6, 7, 148 into turn 13. Turns 12 and 13 rather, and whoa, the curbing can get a little bit scary. Spencer Torrence has now cleared Sean Roberts by 7.5 seconds as Zach Millett goes fastest. Of course, a pit stop looms for each of these drivers. Maybe even 2 for the super late models, as there's Sean Roberts through turns 3 and 4. Jason Duckworth as well, then Kevin McCann, Steve Singer, Brian McCann, and finally Zach Millett is working his way through this field diligently. Up to the 7th position overall. Here's the onboard in the driver's eye perspective. Mounted within the helmet of Zach Millett. He is up to the 7th position. And this puts him 14 seconds behind Spencer Torrence, the race leader. Problems, Sean Roberts around right in front of Zach Millett and others. That is out of turns 8 and 9. And that gives Millett another spot in class. This is the one thing these drivers can't do in the supers, is make mistakes. That just gives the free spots, the free time right back to Zach Millett. You've got the handicap over him. Go ahead and take it. You can't be doing things like this. And I know it's a tough car, so whoa, that's also a really bad rejoin. That is on the apex of a corner. That is a severe no-no. Thankfully, there was no contact there. Everybody had a bit of time to be able to see what was happening and get by it. But, oh, a pit stop. Steve Singer into the pit lane very early. Lap 7 must be counting on an extra bit of fuel burn this evening, unless he's pitting for incidents. But, yeah, that wouldn't make a whole lot of sense. So Steve Singer into his box very early. It'll be gas and go for car 6. Joe Tucker is going to join him as well. This one I could believe would be for incidents, but I'd imagine this will be short enough for a pit stop. Singer, 9.32 seconds in the box. A very interesting move for the 6 car. And that's going to bring him all the way down to 6th in class, 11th overall, as Jason Duckworth is finally passed up by Kevin McCann in the late model stock. But that's not done just yet as Zach Millett approaches. And Millett hard in the braking zone for turns 8 and 9. Duckworth actually sits back to race him a little bit. And sure enough, there goes Millett right on by the 73 car of Duckworth in the short straightaway. Up to turn number 10. And Millett now is within 14 seconds, just barely within 14 seconds of Spencer Torrence. And right on by Kevin McCann. So Zach Millett is now 2nd overall, and we are simply tracking his progress now from this point forward to our race leader, Spencer Torrence. And you know what? These supers are getting real finicky through the corners. The late model stocks are faster in center, but the supers have all the power on corner exit. It's like prototypes with less downforce. What a weird dynamic. I love this, though. Sean Roberts, Brian McCann, they were close for a moment. Roberts now losing time to Brian McCann. Jacob Elliott there in the 7th spot overall. Mark Thomas hanging out in 8th. Johnny Rapp in 9th. Trey Radford will join us in the 10th position currently, ahead of Steve Singer by about 6.5 seconds. Then you'll find Mark Truxell in the 12th position. And Joe Tucker, by the way, who just pitted as well, is down in the 16th and final position overall at the current point in time. He did, however, have a 1 minute and 6 second pit stop. Spencer Torrence, another lap complete as he heads out of turn 10. It is a 13.5 second gap back to Zach Millett. Call it 14 now as they head into turn 10. And let's just watch this gap and see how it changes over the next few corners. Next bit of racing for Zach Millett. Of course, started from the pit lane. That put him behind the mark by quite a bit. But Spencer Torrence has been quite speedy this evening. The last lap time for Torrence was faster than Millett's last lap time. And I say that, and Zach Millett pulls a half second. Zach Millett's last lap, a 1:42.527. Spencer Torrence's last lap, a 1:43.021. Question is that enough to make up the difference? If Spencer's able to hold that to a half second each lap, it would take Zach Millett 26 more laps to catch up. And if somehow Spencer's able to hold it to just that kind of margin each and every lap, I think he actually will hang on to the race lead. It's going to be very close, though, especially as Zach Millett's advantage, I think, grows as this race goes on and these tires wear out. We're going to learn a whole lot about these drivers very, very soon, these two in particular. Slowly there through turn number 10, and Zach Millett gets back on power while he sets chase on our race leader with Spencer Torrence. We're going to go Pit Stop TV side by side this evening from Montreal. There are some great battles actually happening in the background that we'll take a look at first as Jason Duckworth passes Brian McCann, and here goes Sean Roberts on by Mark Thomas. And now we'll go Pit Stop TV side by side for the first time this evening, and we'll be back in just a few. Welcome back to the virtual Montreal, Canada, and the virtual Circuit Gilles Villeneuve, a legendary circuit that is borderline road course and street course all in one, and of course has entertained NASCAR, Formula One, and so many other great series in its history. We rejoin you on lap 12 of 30 after a brief side-by-side break, only a couple of laps past, and I want to remind everybody of where we stand with our points coming into this evening. Zach Millett, the points leader. That is not much of a surprise to those who know this series, but he's doing it by 108 points already over Sean Roberts and Jason Duckworth. Add in a new player, by the way, to this super late model field, Spencer Torrens, who was on a ripper of a race. He might not be able to keep the lap time that he needs over Zach Millett, but I tell you what, he is doing a fantastic job of trying. He is giving up now a second a lap, it looks like, to the number 315, but he is going to put up one heck of a fight over Zach Millett for the race win this evening. Meanwhile, in late model stock car racing, Mark Thomas has taken over the race lead briefly, but Steve Singer currently sits in the race lead as they run after pit stops. Mark Thomas simply has not yet pitted. That's your point standings. Let's get back down trackside and take a look at where everybody's at. Spencer Torrens leading this race in the Brez Coffee Company number 10. And he is coming through turns 6 and 7 now. He is yet to pit as we near lap 15. And we've seen, for the most part, 2 pit stops for the Supers each and every race so far. But the late model stock cars have been holding to 1 pit stop more often than not. That seems to be the opposite this evening, as the Supers are looks like going for 2 total runs, and the late model stocks are going for 3, which would of course be 2 pit stops. Zach Millett still on the racetrack. There's Logan Spencer Torrens. How about Jason Duckworth in the 3rd spot? Sean Roberts in 4th. Johnny Rapp in 5th. Overall and now in class, as none of those drivers, no super late model driver has yet to pit aside from Joe Tucker 5 laps ago. Steve Singer now takes over the race lead in late model stock racing, going by Mark Thomas, who pitted this last time through. And when you look at pit times, Singer at a 9.32, the quickest pit stop of the night so far, as McCann checks in at an 11.85, gave up the race lead this way. Jacob Elliott at a 10.88, and Brian McCann at a 10.6. These two have been racing tooth and nail since they left the pit lane, and you can see it has taken an effect, taken a lot of an effect on the 07 car of Jake Elliott. And that's recent damage as well. We were taking a look at the 07 a lot through that side-by-side break, and we just found the reason, actually. Let's back up one more time and show off why this happened. And we'll do so from the onboard. Elliott had already passed McCann, but take a look at this. This is into turns 3 and 4, sun brightly in his eyes, and Elliott through turn 3 looks pretty good. Through turn 4, carries too much speed, pow, right in the wall. And about knocked the right side off of that car. Got it again there in turn 5. And that is why Elliott now has got all of this right side damage. 2 hits in very fast succession to one another. And Jacob Elliott suddenly has all of that right side damage. Spencer Torrens, meanwhile, is down to an 8-second lead over Zach Millett and closing, as they're both in the same piece of racetrack. And there goes the 88 car of Eddie Rose to the outside lane to give way. Eric Beadle, by the way, also now 1 lap down. No retirements yet from this race, and I just want to commend all these drivers. I know this is a tough combo. This is a very tough race car to get around road courses, especially in the late model stock. Or sorry, especially in the super late model. But a quick mention to all of you drivers this evening that are staying in these cars and giving it your all. It is super, super appreciated by us here at Pit Stop TV to have drivers stay in a whole race. Here's Leonardo Elijah out of the pit lane this time, and we have got more takers behind him. Eddie Rose into the pits, Zach Millett as well, right at the halfway mark, and this could be a little bit dangerous for Millett. It depends on how good he feels on fuel. I think you would want to go one more lap. This is after lap 14, coming on to 15, that he has chosen to pit, and this just feels slightly too early. At least to me. He's not alone, though. Jason Duckworth comes into the pit lane just behind him. And, of course, you saw the two late model stock cars that pitted. Johnny Rapp now comes into the pit lane from the Mission Barbecue number 52 Dodge Challenger. So the only two cars that have not pitted at all this evening are Spencer Torrence and Sean Roberts, both of which lead this race. And if Torrence is able to make this a one-stop race, but Millett isn't, right there, I think you have your strategy winner. And, oh, can't be doing that, though. Torrence can't get ahead of himself. That is lighting up the rears big time out of turn 10. Might that be why we're seeing these drivers pit a little bit early? I don't know. But Millett did take a 4-tire stop. So another bit of interesting information. I think if you're Spencer Torrence, you have to go no tires. Whether or not you take 2 stops or 1 stop, you have to go no tires now. And he'll come into the pit lane this lap right at the exact halfway mark. 15 laps complete, 15 to go. And this feels like the right time to pit. Into the pit box for Spencer Torrence. Let's see what he opts to do. It's going to be a 4-tire stop. I'm surprised. I know he's going for grip here, but you could have taken at least 10 or 11 seconds off that pit stop by simply not taking tires. That's extra time you have over Zach Millett. Sure, he's going to be closing in a second a lap. I don't know. You already have 8 seconds. I would have tried the no-tire strategy, but Spencer Torrence now taking a long time to leave. He has been in the pit lane for a while, and Zach Millett has gone right on by. Tragedy for the 10 car. What is going on here? He's still in the pit lane. Is he serving a penalty, maybe? This is absolutely huge. And finally, Spencer Torrence is going to roll from the pit lane. A total pit lane time of 1 minute and 1 second. A potential race win out the window for the 10 car. This is absolutely massive. Wow. Steve Singer now takes over the race lead outright. Zach Millett, though, in the distance, is closing in quickly. Sure enough, Zach Millett's going to be getting more penalties next week. And oh, Steve Singer wheel hops there to turn 10, opens the door for Kevin McCann. This is going to be interesting as they work onto the casino straight, and Zach Millett closes in. Your top 3 on the racetrack, top 4 make that, all in the same picture. Singer, McCann, Millett, your top 3. As they head into the Wall of Champions, half the race down, half the race to go. This time by, it'll be 14 laps remaining at Circuit Gilles Villeneuve. And somewhere, Zach Millett has got to find room to get by these 2 cars. But where is he going to find it? Granted, he does have some 12 seconds back to second place in Supers. I think he could relax if he wanted to. It's a matter of the overall victory at this point. And here comes Kevin McCann alongside the 6 car. Is he going to send it into turn 3? Absolutely, I would have too. Big pass there for the 33 car, but Steve Singer's not done yet. Back to the left side of the 33. He looks, gets squeezed over. That's through turn 5. Now turn 6, the 33 defensive comes back over, and there's nothing that Steve Singer can do but watch Kevin McCann drive away now out of turn 7. He gets a bit loose there on quarter exit, but here comes Zach Millett. And that's going to make things even that much more difficult, as Millett is going to have a run in that much more highly powered super late model. Doesn't go for it yet. Probably will into turn 10 or out of turn 11. A huge issue for Spencer Torrence has flipped this race completely around. Suddenly, late model stocks are leading the way once again, but for how long? And Zach Millett is tiptoeing right now in his super late model on brand new Hoosier tires. And here comes Millett. He's going to have a run on Singer. Singer gets out of the way. Millett now on McCann is going to make that pass quickly, and Zach Millett back to overall race lead. I say back to overall race lead. He is now the overall race leader for the first time tonight. Zach Millett out front at Montreal with just 13 laps remaining. We do have a battle forming behind as Mark Thomas is going to go right on by Sean Roberts, and Mark Thomas is now pitting. He just pitted 4 laps ago, so clearly did so when he was a little bit short on fuel and is coming in now just for a splash, but to keep rear weight on the car over the rear axle. And just to get this pit stop out of the way. So an early stop here for Mark Thomas in the 50. Thomas also now taking his faster pair as Spencer Torrance goes fastest on the racetrack. That's not going to help him now, I'm afraid. Waiting on Thomas to release. He's taking a 4-tire stop. I'm surprised by that. I would have taken a splash and dash. Well, back up to Jacob Elliott. He runs in the 3rd spot in class, chasing down Steve Singer. And Singer suddenly is looking a lot more weak in this race, falling back more and more from Kevin McCann. He is still within a second of the 33 car, but Steve is just having problems here and there. We saw him get loose and open the door in the first place. Wheel hop opened the door for Kevin McCann and led to the pass. That said, it's not over as Mark Truxell is into the pit lane. And I don't think we have seen many more than 1 or 2 mistakes out of this entire field this evening, by the way. Props to this entire Noble Can-Am racing field once again. Because I don't think I've seen a single car in any barriers. Jacob Elliott into the pits. Brian McCann comes with him. Elliott has not used a fast repair yet. I wonder if he'll do so here. There's much damage on the right side of the car. Of course, he probably doesn't know, but he does take it anyways. And it looks like McCann does the same. Actually, well, it might update on pit exit, but it's not listing either driver as having taken it, as Leonardo Elijah comes in. And sure enough, fast repair taken for Jacob Elliott. No fast repair taken from Brian McCann as he exits right next to Spencer Torrance. And Torrance, of course, has power up to turn 3 and will go right on by the 3 car, taking over the 6th position overall. Zach Millett just had a bit of a moment, has lost the race lead to Kevin McCann. What happened here? Take a look here for the 315 car to have a mistake, a rare mistake. Just as I praise the entire field, it is our alien race leader who makes a slip up in the number 315 super late model. Wide there at turn 7, gets loose and just has to get out of the power and give up that time to Kevin McCann. Not even anything bad, hard to even consider it a mistake, but it sure enough was. And we saw Millett take tires at that pit stop. I'm surprised he's having this many struggles as Steve Singer is into the pit lane. Clearly, most of the field counting on a 2-stop. There goes Eric Beadle in the 119. Joe Tucker is in as well, and going for tires, surprisingly. There you look at Steve Singer in car number 6, waiting to be released. It is going to be a longer gas and go, but a gas and go nonetheless. Just 12.85 seconds in the box for the number 6 car. No tires taken. I like that move. It brings him out right behind Brian McCann. This could be the race that we see Steve Singer finally show up. It's been a long couple of weeks for him to get this season started. on board with Spencer Torrence. He chases down Jacob Elliott here. You see, it's only a couple of tenths of a second, which I'm surprised by. It looks like Elliott is further ahead than this 10 car, but very, very close. We do now have just 10 laps to go here at Montreal. Zach Millett just behind Kevin McCann. And McCann is turning very similar lap times to Millett at this point. I don't see much advantage to the 315 suddenly. Maybe it's just that he's saving his stuff, throttling back because he knows that he doesn't need to push anything right now. He's got 13 seconds back to Sean Roberts. This is just the smart Zach Millett trying to come out and run a smart race to the end here, it looks like. Meanwhile, Jacob Elliott pushes on the back end of Spencer Torrence, trying to get back to that 10 car. Torrence, though, on by for good, it looks like, as he tries to come back through the field. He is 20 seconds behind Zach Millett, but I don't think he's going to make that time up in just 10 laps. And problems? No. Pit stop here for Johnny Rapp, as Jacob Elliott goes alongside Spencer Torrence and makes the 10 car's life a little bit more difficult. And this is an interesting thing. Late model stocks, of course, they're trying to race. But do you use the mid-corner speed to be a nuisance to a super late model just because? I don't understand this. Two cars that are in separate classes that just don't need to be fighting. Torrence is much faster than Jacob Elliott, not only on the straightaways. And Elliott really just pushed to get back by thanks to his mid-corner speed. That's part of it. And the Super is faster in a lap just because of this stretch of racetrack here. But that's not to say that Spencer Torrence isn't faster on the lap as a whole. And I think the 10 car is going to be a little less forgiving, going on by that time through. I really question what we just saw, to be honest, between the 07 and 10 cars. That was questionable is a nice way to put it, in my opinion. I don't understand interclass battling like this. Not only are these different cars with different strengths, they're in different battles, and they score points differently. The Super, of course, only scores points versus super late models. And the late model stocks only score points versus the late model stocks. I don't understand, because that move now from Jake Elliott a half a lap ago has only slowed them down further and brought Brian McCann closer to the 07. And now, because they're both racing, because they're both heated, this is interesting. I know that probably sounds opinionated. Again, I understand the late model stock has got mid-corner speed. I understand why Jake wants to go by. But if you simply allow the Super to have about 2 seconds to drive a normal lap and get away, that Super late model will be gone. And if anything, you can close back in by the time you get to turn 10 and then use the draft on the backstretch and use that to pull back away from Brian McCann. Hopefully I don't upset too many people with that, but that's just the way I see this. I've seen a lot of different kinds of racing. That said, I don't know everything, certainly, but this just seems a little bit counterintuitive to me. All of this said, Zach Millett has now lost 4 seconds to Kevin McCann, and I can't tell if it's intentional or happenstance for the 315 car, as he has dropped well back of the 33, but it looks like Kevin McCann might be winning overall this evening in Montreal. And see, there you go. All it took was that extra lap. All it took was for the 10 car to exit turn 10 ahead of the 07, and it's no longer a problem for Jacob Elliott. That was all it took. Now, when two classes are fighting for the same points on the racetrack as we see in the North American Racing League, I understand it, because that, while yes, they're classified differently in their own standings, there are class formats where Jacob Elliott would have been racing the 10 car there for a point, and I understand that entirely in that case. That is completely different, but when you're racing for separate points, I really don't understand it. And now I will say Spencer Torrance just lost a lot of time in those twisty bits. Elliott closes back in a little bit, but let's see how this kind of evolves. This is now turns 8 and 9. Elliott's closed back in. Torrance is going to pull back away. And it's a product of these cars being a little bit different, but still very, very close. They're slightly differently built chassis, but they follow the same formula of tube frame chassis, big motor, 4 gears, go rip. And, I mean, again, I will say, Jacob Elliott is doing a fantastic job. He is turning great lap times, doing a great job behind the wheel of this late model stock car as Kevin McCann comes into the pit lane. And I don't want to just make it sound like I'm just dragging on Jake, but I think there just needs to be a different prioritization there. And thankfully, I'll leave it with this passing thought that thankfully it hasn't caused a crash. Everybody, I think, is going to get away okay, and that'll probably be the end of that. Before we close this out, on a better note, I do want to go through the field and look at some of these race cars. There are some grand paint schemes in this field that we don't get to talk all about. One of them being Eddie Rose, who is just running a clean race on his own back here, has been well out of the way of the leaders when they've lapped him. So props here to Eddie in the 88 car. He is last. You can't skip over that part of his race, but he is currently on the lead lap and just minding his own business. Props to Eddie keeping the car on the racetrack and looking beautiful, by the way, in that 88 car. Then a little ways up the road, you've got Joe Tucker. We've seen a bit of that Smith & Wesson 13 car. Good to see him still on the racetrack, still moving along. But you can tell he is struggling with that car this evening. A lot of these drivers have. And that is something to be said for this Super in general, this Super late model class. It is difficult. Here you have a look at Eric Beadle in the 119 car, recently back onto the racetrack and recently passed as well. A little further up the road, how about Mark Truxell in the 5 car? Mark Truxell allows the 10 of Spencer Torrance to go by, and I think there are some cars one lap down. Unfortunately, timing and scoring is not picking them up on my screen correctly, but there are some cars lap down, including Eddie Rose. However, there's a look at Leonardo Elijah in the 43 car. Always has great paint schemes, has one this evening. Troy Radford, same deal. I like the orange trim and the orange roll bars. Johnny Rapp, I really love this wrap, if you will, particularly the Dodge Challenger decals. I do also like that green number, the green trim down on the bottom of the nose there, as he kind of blows turn 10 a little bit, but that's okay. I think we've seen about most of the field from here. Mark Thomas in the nice chrome and colorful 50. Of course, Jason Duckworth with his black and white flames and the butt kicker on the side of his car. Steve Singer, maybe the greatest paint scheme in the league history, but we'll leave that one to be decided as he works to pass the number 119. And Kevin McCann, Sean Roberts are fighting. This is more inter-class fighting, but I think that was a little bit more straightforward. As Kevin McCann loses that spot, now Sean Roberts blows 8 and 9, and I think that again, that's reasonable for the late model stock to try and take the outside lane. If a Super makes a big mistake like that, all right, go for it. But you see what happens. Easily, Sean Roberts gets back in front of the 33 car. Is going to have a run here out of turn 10. And, if he can get the power down, he'll have a run anyways. That was a little bit scary for a moment. Jacob Elliott does have company from Brian McCann, by the way. That is what Jake was trying to avoid, and I understand certainly the urgency in mind, as Brian McCann now is all over the back end of the 07 car. So there was a reason as to why Jacob wanted to fight. I just think it needed to be carried out differently, as we're now within 5 laps to go for these two drivers, and Brian could get there. Into turn 1, heavy on the brakes, and we haven't really seen a whole lap of this late model around Montreal, so we'll stay on board here with Brian McCann as he gets it done, chasing the 07 car. The sun is setting there behind turn 3, making it more and more difficult to see into this corner, but thankfully the trees alongside the riverbank are helping. Turn 3 curving, rather usable. Turn 4, sure. Turn 5, kind of a flick of the wrist. But you've got to make sure not to overdrive 5, stay in the throttle too long as you get into turn 6 rather deeply. And look at this, we are now closing back in on Spencer Torrence, and this could be a problem again for Jacob Elliott. Spencer Torrence has been putting in some pretty solid lap times. That lap, though, was a detour from that, as Elliott and McCann were actually a couple of tenths faster than the number 10. Zach Millett, though, now turning 146s, so even Sean Roberts is now closing on the 315. I think Zach is holding something back. I don't know why. He took 4 tires. Unless he took less fuel, which is a possibility, he may have underfueled the car and is trying to throttle back. We'll watch this fight. And actually, let's just listen in. Let's take this opportunity to listen into the 315. Yep, he's saving. Well, there you go. I think, again, that proves why I think Spencer Torrence needed to do something a little bit different there on the pit stop. Although Spencer is closing, he's only 12 seconds back with 4 laps to go. I don't think he's going to make up 3 seconds per lap, but he's certainly going to give it a shot as Kevin McCann fights here with Sean Roberts. Again, interclass fighting. I feel like this is slowing them both down, though. This is the problem. And this might be a little bit different. I think this is going to be reverse, where I think Kevin McCann has been far more consistent. Sean Roberts has used the Super's power to get back by him multiple times, but how do you tell a faster car maybe to slow down, right? But you know what? As much as I go on and on about this dynamic, that is what is making this series that much more interesting and compelling. Is we have this car and class difference, and we're going to be talking about it all 9 races. How these two cars interact, how these two classes interact, the battles between them. I mean, here comes Jacob Elliott again. Torrence just got in a little bit deep on the brakes. And now into turn 10, you see the 10 is kind of pulled back away. It's going to keep it nice and tidy down to the curbing here. And we'll drive back away from the 07 out of turn 11. It's a cycle. Torrence, by the way, 12 seconds behind Zach Millett, as Millett takes the 3 to go signal, this time by from the flag stand. Clutch in probably right about now for turn 1. Yep, before the start finish line. Wow. Meanwhile, onto the front stretch come Kevin McCann and Sean Roberts. Sure enough, Sean Roberts has throttled back a little bit. And we have some takers on the pit lane. Leonardo Elijah and Eddie Rose into the pits. All while Spencer Torrence is closing in on Sean Roberts, and man, if Jacob Elliott wasn't already frustrated with the 10 car and this late model stock versus super late model fight, he's going to be even more frustrated when the 10 car catches the 66, I think, because when Torrence gets there, it's going to be an awkward fight, I think. Joe Tucker slow. Problems for the 13 car. He gets back going. And Eddie Rose will leave the pit lane now as Tucker lights up the rears once more. Once again, turns 6 and 7. The 07 closes in. And Spencer Torrence blinks a little bit, but has plenty of time back into turns 8 and 9. Chasing the rear of the car through 8 and 9, but staying a little further ahead. And here we go. Fight for second in super late models. Here comes Jacob Elliott. This is going to get difficult. Brian McCann is closing. Sean Roberts has just been passed for second in class. Third on the racetrack. Jacob Elliott trying to go to the outside. McCann to the inside. Contact. That is for second in late model stocks. McCann got back to his right rear. And what I've kind of glossed over is we don't know if these guys have to pit yet. It looks like they're good to go. I don't recall why Steve Singer is behind these guys, if there even is a reason, but he's 20 seconds back. He must have had a huge mistake at some point. 8 seconds back, rather. That said, 2 laps to go. Spencer Torrence has cleared the 66. I don't think he'll be making up 9 seconds in these last 2 laps, though, unless Zach Millett has a severe issue. Meanwhile, here's Kevin McCann in the number 33. He is clearly away to a race victory this evening. Is good on fuel, pitted 5 laps ago. Something had to have happened to Steve Singer while we were checking into the whole debacle between late model stock and super late model. Let's see, here he was just ahead of Truxell. That's where he passed Truxell. This is ahead of Beetle. This had to have happened a while back, so excuse me while I look for this. Wow, I guess he's been back there for a while. I don't know how he even ended up in this position. Unfortunately for Steve Singer, it looks like we're not going to find it this evening. As we go back up to our race leaders, Jacob Elliott, Kevin McCann, Brian McCann rather. I'm going to confuse those two all season long. But Brian McCann working here on Jacob Elliott. This is for second in class as Zach Millett exits the wall of champions. 1 lap to go in Canada for these drivers. Spencer Torrance 10 seconds back, and Millett has turned up the wick once again. He must be good on fuel as we take the white flag presented by Whiplash Simcams. Sean Roberts in trouble. Spins coming into the pit lane in turn 13. And Roberts will come into the pits, and I'm not really sure why he's coming into the pits unless it's for fuel. Which is a very solid possibility, but Spencer Torrance now second on the racetrack. Well, second in class. Third on the racetrack overall. He's got Jacob Elliott just behind. Brian McCann now has fallen back. And there must have been trouble there, including Sean Roberts. Steve Singer's closed in a little bit, but everything is falling into place. Again, something happened to Steve Singer at some point in this race to move him back, but nothing was going to get in the way of Zach Millett this evening. And Spencer Torrance, what do you know, actually gives the spot back up to Jacob Elliott. Makes a mistake, it looks like, through 6 and 7 and gives that position up. Zach Millett down the casino straight for the final time this evening. Started from the pit lane. Behind the entire field and then some. Pitted for tires once. Thought he was a bit short on fuel. Sure enough, he saved. He gave up time. But it was all in plan for him to go back to victory lane in the Noble Can-Am Series. Victory lane checkered flag. The 315 car in Montreal, and the 33 of Kevin McCann back to victory lane for Kevin. Jacob Elliott out of the Wall of Champions will take second place this evening, matching a race win at Lime Rock last time out. Spencer Torrance in his first start goes second in class, and Brian McCann will take over the overall top 5, third place in late model stock cars as the rest of the field comes on through. An oddly clean but demanding race this evening at Circuit Gilles Villeneuve. Thanks for joining us at Pit Stop TV. It has been a treat. A little bit controversial at a time or two, I'm sure. I might have differing opinions to these drivers. That's okay. Eddie Rose, though, will be our final car to finish up this race in Montreal in the 16th position. A clean race car, though. Very, very clean for Eddie Rose, and the 88 car comes across the line and finishes. Let's take a look at our overall race results. Zach Millett, of course, with the race win from pit lane. For that win penalty, bests Kevin McCann and everybody else by plenty of time. Jacob Elliott will follow Kevin McCann there in the late model stock class. Spencer Torrance, and a penalty for Johnny Rapp. He has just been dropped from the middle of the field, I think in the top 10. You saw it change there quickly in the unofficial results screen. Johnny Rapp has been dropped to 15th overall, last in class. And I don't know what for, I'd imagine for incidents. But Zach Millett wins in super late models. Kevin McCann wins in late model stocks. You see the rest there. Spencer Torrance, his first start in the series, goes fourth. Steve Singer, not sure what happened there still for the sixth car. He goes sixth. Sean Roberts, seventh. Jason Duckworth, eighth. Mark Thomas, Troy Radford complete your top 10 overall. Ahead of Mark Truxell, Leonardo Elijah, Eric Beadle, Joe Tucker, Johnny Rapp, and Eddie Rose. Once again, Zach Millett proves himself to be a little bit of an alien here in the Noble Can-Am Series, going back to victory lane for the third time consecutively. Zach, do you even know what the win penalty is next week?
Man, I don't know. Can it be any worse?
Well, it definitely worked against you, and for a little bit in the mid portion of the race during pit stops, it looked like maybe Spencer had something for you. How aware were you of his pace and the delta between you two?
Man, I knew he was fast. It all comes down to how much tire you can save, and I mean, my first 3 laps, I'm glad I wasn't on camera very much because it was awful, and I pretty much killed my tires right off the bat. But I think it was his race to win, especially when he stretched it that extra lap for gas. I don't know how he did it, but we pretty much put ourselves in a major hole there right off the start and had to conserve at least about 10 laps on that final stint.
Well, I know you say that you don't know how he did it, and I know why you say you don't know how he did it, but you did it in that last run. How much saving did it require? Because we noticed a couple of times you were putting the clutch in before the start-finish line for turn 1. How diligent did you have to be? How disciplined did you have to be?
Oh, it was awful. It was the hardest thing to do, especially with the other class cars. You know, they're already faster, you know, on like the infield and the tighter turns, and the only time you can really pass anybody is under power. And you know, when the car is off, it's hard to stay in front of them. So we had to kind of let Kevin McCann by there. He had really good pace anyway, but when we let him by, it was a little easier. And it's just tough. It's tough saving fuel in these things because you just never know. You never trust the iRacing stats anyway. I've got race labs up, but I still don't. I hate to trust it.
So how much of a strategy point do you think this becomes? Saving fuel to go that extra lap to make it a one-stop race?
And I'm starting to think it's everything. It really is. I mean, pace is always pretty important, but I mean, you can be fast, but if you're out of gas, you're not going to go very far with it. So we're going to have to do some more practice with the strategy side of things.
Well, it'll certainly be difficult to save gas next week at Watkins Glen, that full throttle course, or so it seems. It's going to be fun to watch that take place. Zach, best of luck in race number 4, starting from, I'm sure, outside of the zip code, maybe the next state over, I don't know. But Zach, congrats on the race win again. We'll see you next time out.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Zach Millett overcomes the win penalty and wins this evening at Montreal. And, of course, that means that we can move on then to Kevin McCann with the nearly overall race win, but still late model stock race win. Kevin, a fantastic performance for you in class. There were a couple of battles early that you had to go through, but you've got a few laps led this evening, 4 in total overall, and the whole day has just got to feel like a big success.
Yeah, really a perfect race. You know, just going into it, just thinking, don't make any mistakes. You know, it's pretty much a street course. Putting it in the wall is pretty easy, so I just wanted to keep the car clean. Got to start out front, and yeah, just navigated the traffic pretty well. I felt like a bit tricky with some of the super late models. Overall, their lap time after they had a few laps on their tires, they were slower, but they were quicker on the straights. So really had to be strategic about where you caught them. And ultimately, how can you get around them? Because, they're ultimately holding you up a little bit. So, I just don't think it could have went any better. Pretty good race.
Of course, looking forward to Watkins Glen next week. Things are going to be very, very different. We go from what was already kind of NASCAR's first street course, if you want to say, to NASCAR's kind of Popeye's biscuit away from an oval road course in Watkins Glen International. Very fast, on throttle all the time. It's going to be difficult to save fuel, but passes will be aplenty, I think, in the draft. How do you attack it?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. These cars don't draft too well. So passing, I think, is going to be pretty tough. I don't know what iRacing did. They just didn't give it like a drag model or something. They never expected them to race on courses this big. So it's really hard to get a run on a guy, so, especially if he's, within a tenth or two of you. So I think you're going to have to put the bumper to him, honestly, to get around. And, on a high-speed track, that's going to be tricky to do without taking anybody out.
So tonight's late model stock race winner, expecting some physical racing next week at Watkins Glen. Kevin, good to talk to you as always. Congratulations on the class race win. Hopefully we're talking to you maybe from overall victory lane next week at Watkins Glen.
I appreciate it.
Kevin began this evening with some big-time success behind the wheel of the 33 car. We'll move on down to the guy who goes second place and the guy who I might have criticized the most this evening, Jacob Elliott. It's all a good day's work, but Jacob, you had some tumultuous times. First off, I know I was very critical of the battle between you and Spencer Torrance, but I do want to hear your side of things, and especially the dynamic between the late model stock and the super late model on the racetrack. It can't be easy.
Yeah, definitely not easy. Going in the corners, it's tough because I can get the power down a lot better than they can, and so I'm right on his rear bumper, not trying to get into him, but I got to also catch the guy in front of him, which is the race leader. So it's tough, but it's racing. It's going to happen.
It is racing, especially with this particular dynamic, and as it may go one way one day, it might go the other the next day. That is just part of it, and that's what I think is going to make this series so much fun over the rest of the 6 races we still have left to go. And it might be the most difficult to navigate next week, potentially, at Watkins Glen. It's a big unknown. Long straightaways, but also some very grip-demanding corners. How do you attack it from the late model stock perspective?
I think we're going to take a look at this strategy and really try and change it up. Maybe get way off pace, and that way we can be nowhere near those supers and those lap cars, because they were definitely pretty deadly this race.
We saw Steve Singer pit very, very early in this race, take a splash and dash. Do you think you do something like that?
Yeah, that was actually on the board, to pit real early. That way we can get away from that main pack. But ultimately we just split it up into thirds, and we decided we were going to take some tires left sides, because honestly it only added about a half second to the pit, and it really paid off in the long run.
There you go, Jacob Elliott, expecting a bit of a strategy race next week at Watkins Glen. Feels fair to say for sure. Jacob, a race win last week, a second place this week. You're off to a great start in the series. We'll see you next week.
Yeah, definitely. See you guys next week.
Jacob Elliott, a fantastic run this evening at Montreal. And Spencer Torrance has actually declined an interview this evening. You see him there in the foreground. A member of Firelight Esports, a little bit frustrated with how his performance went this evening. In his own words, well, I can't quite repeat them, so we'll just leave it at that. But unfortunate for Card 10 and not go to victory lane, but fortunate for sure for him to still go top 5 overall, second place in class. And I want to commend Spencer for a really solid debut in this series. I know he feels like he gave it away, but I still feel like he gave himself ample opportunity early in this race to take the race win, potentially away from the strongest driver in this series. Just made a decision or two that maybe, compromised that possibility potentially, and that's just how racing goes sometimes. You either do one thing and it works, or do the other thing and it works, and it's part of it. That said, we can look ahead to the rest of this season this evening, and Watkins Glen next up. It is going to be a really, really difficult challenge for these drivers. I don't know yet how these cars are going to react in this kind of setting. I think you could take late model stocks around there and have a pretty solid race. You could take super late models there and have a pretty solid race, but put the two together, and it's going to be a very interesting dynamic, especially dependent on the track layout. I'm actually going to go through my messages with Steve Singer because I don't recall exactly which layout it is. I'm going to go remind myself. I'm sure he'll message me before I even get to it. If it is the boot or the non-boot layout. And that, I think, is going to have all of the difference on next week's race, because if it is the Cup course, the non-boot layout, I think it's going to be much more faceted. It's the Cup layout. I just checked. It is the Cup layout at Watkins Glen next week, which is going to be so much faster and so much more, I think, in the hands of the super late model, but also there's a lot of corners still that every corner really, I think, aside from maybe the S's, and even the S's, I think with this tire wear on the super late model is probably going to lend itself to a late model stock car. And of course, every corner at Watkins Glen is that much more important for the corner afterwards, because if you mess up one corner, if you're slow in one corner, that's going to hurt your run into the next. And it is really going to prioritize mid-corner speed, which sure, you might think straight line speed, just top out at Watkins Glen, but if you slip up in turn 1, for example, that's your run into the bottom of the S is ruined. If you slip up in the S's especially, that is your whole first half of your lap gone. And if I think you can give a little bit of time sometimes in the bus stop and get away with it. If you mess up in the carousel, coming back out of turn 5 towards turn 6 on that backstretch, the second backstretch, if you will, again, a really speed dependent part of racetrack that if you give up a tenth, it becomes a second, it feels like. So a really difficult racetrack for these supers next week. It's going to be interesting to see how they can manage that tire wear, especially on the left sides. That said, we can take a look at our upcoming broadcast as a whole here at Pit Stop TV. Tomorrow evening, we go to Martinsville Speedway, July 10th, with Elite Performance Industries for Short Track Mondays, a new program with them as we pick up coverage of Advanced Legends Racing going to Martinsville next week, or tomorrow night. Then on to some other short tracks throughout the course of July. Tuesday evening, we re-pick up, if you will, the D-Line Racing League, brought to you by Elevated Performance, North Wilkesboro Speedway for the late model stock cars. Of course, we just saw a bunch of late model stocks on track on a road course. We're going to be doing it oval style on July 11th at the virtual North Wilkesboro Speedway, still in its 1987 state. Friday evening, we pick up a new road course series, though, the Barber Ford Mustang Club, heading out to Charlotte Motor Speedway on the Roval, July 14th. A bunch of Mustangs fighting it out, pony cars, crowds beware. It's going to be a lot of fun on Friday evening. I really am looking forward to this series as a whole. One race a month, this Barber Ford Mustang Club is getting together, and all drivers, by the way, all drivers get a $500 voucher to Barber Ford. That'll do it this evening for us at Pit Stop TV. Make sure to follow us along on social media, and make sure to check out our partners here at the channel. Of course, Whiplash Media, SimCams, ATVO, and CC's Business. Thanks as always to our partners behind the scenes in audio, ATVO, Whiplash Media, SimCams, OBS, and iRacing.com. And congratulations to Zach Millett and Kevin McCann winning this evening in Montreal. We will see you guys at Watkins Glen next Sunday, or hopefully at Martinsville Speedway tomorrow night for some legend car racing.
With the Butt Kicker Gamer 2, what you see and what you hear is what you feel. Butt Kicker. The future is feeling.